So Titans is now officially back with its second season and its first episode of the season. This episode was originally supposed to be the finale of season 1, or at least most of it is. I think the scenes with the new actors, like Bruce Wayne's actor or Deathstroke's actor, I don't think those were shot for the original finale of season 1, but most of the season, or most of the episode was, and the reason they didn't air it as the original finale is because I think they just couldn't put it together in time. The CGI for this episode was a lot more than it was for any episode before it, even though the CGI in this episode is pretty bad. That's probably the reason they didn't air it as the original finale of season 1, which I think was at the detriment of season 1 because the finale of season 1 did not feel like a finale at all. It had such a weird cliffhanger that it felt like it was going to lead into one more episode being the finale, and that was this episode. And this episode also, very weird premiere that I think would have served as a pretty good finale for season 1. But anyway, I still think this episode is pretty good, and I'll get to in why I think that and what I think about this episode overall in this review. So the episode begins right where the last episode left off, even though there was a whole season, or the whole season break in between, but Dick is taken over by Trigon, and then he chases down Gar and Rachel, the only two characters. Actually, Beast Boy is the only character on the cast who wasn't taken over by Trigon, so that's pretty interesting, but this whole chase scene, it's pretty creepy, it's pretty disarming, so I think that was a actual pretty good way to start the episode. But then we see Hawk and Dove going to Wayne Manor to get Jason Todd because of what we saw in a couple episodes earlier when Dove or Dawn woke up from her coma and said that she has to get Jason Todd because that's what Raven told them to do, and it turns out they were actually looking for Batman, but Batman wasn't there, so Jason Todd joins the fray, which is cool. I think this scene with Hawk and Dove meeting Jason Todd is actually pretty interesting. It's a pretty entertaining scene. Throughout the episode, there's a couple interactions between Hawk and Jason, and they're really funny for the most part. Just the reactions of Hawk reacting to how Jason is, I think it's really, really funny and entertaining, and that was definitely the case in this scene as well, which I think was just such an awesome way to incorporate these characters into this final showdown, which again, if this was the finale, would have been so much cooler as the climax of the season. So as Hawk, Dove, and Jason arrive on the scene, Trigon lets all of them in, and they all have their own murder dreams, which is what the entirety of the last episode was. The finale of season 1 was all about Dick Grayson's murder dream, where he's being overtaken by Trigon and he ends up killing Batman. And then Starfire, Donna Troy, Jason Todd, Hawk, and Dove, they all have their own murder dreams. The first one we see is Starfire when she just walks into the house. She's in the house automatically. Now this entire time I did not know if this was a dream until right at the end. Like, I feel like I thought she would be stopped from killing Rachel, so that was definitely very surprising. But when Rachel was killed, I obviously knew that it was a dream. Still, though, it was a pretty good twist. Then we saw Donna Troy killing a pyromaniac who killed her father, which was definitely not as good as Starfire, definitely not the best murder dream or whatever, but I think that it still worked. I mean, it still was pretty cool, and if that pyromaniac ends up being like Heatwave or Firefly, a pyromaniac from the comics, I think that would be pretty cool. Now, Jason Todd's murder dream was probably the best one, as it's a continuation of the Dick Grayson's murder dream in the last episode in the last season. As he killed Batman, Jason Todd now arrives on the scene, even though in that murder dream Jason Todd was paralyzed. This is obviously Jason Todd's, but Robin kills Batman, and then Robin fights Robin, which is a very cool fight scene. It was probably my favorite murder dream in this episode out of all the Titans. The one that's the worst is probably Hawk and Dove, which is just them doing heroin. I mean, they didn't even kill anybody, so that was definitely anticlimactic for the final murder dream of the episode of the Titans, for Hawk and Dove to just do heroin. I feel like that part of it was weird, but for the most part, these murder dreams were definitely pretty cool to see. And I will say, even though this thing where Trigon gets in your head and makes you kill somebody in a dream, or for the Hawk and Dove case, do heroin, that's not really a thing for Trigon on the comics. It's a unique take on Trigon, which I actually like. I think this episode definitely fleshed them out a lot more than the last two episodes, which is why I think that even though the first season ended up being not as good as it could have been, I think if this was the finale, then Trigon could have ended up being a fairly good villain. Not great. I still think that he definitely wasn't great, especially compared to what Trigon typically is, but at least least it would have been better than what this season ended up being. But anyway, this leads to the Control Titans beating the crap out of Gar, which is pretty brutal, and then Rachel's heart breaks, or figuratively breaks, as she's revealed to that she's a murder machine, a killing machine. That's what she's made for. And then this awakens Trigon's true form or something, and I gotta say, even though I complained about Trigon not being in his true form in season 1, even though I feel like his human form was definitely very disappointing for the fact that that's all we saw, I will say that it's preferred over this true form, as not only is the design just way off, but the CGI is really, really bad. And this is the reason, probably, I think, that this episode didn't end up being a part of season 1, and instead it was pushed off way later to the premiere of season 2, way later in when it was released, so probably they could finish the CGI, which is weird to me, and I don't think it was worth it, because the CGI is not good, which is weird because I feel like these shows have a bigger budget. I mean, I think production-wise, they look a lot better than the Arrowverse shows, but on the Arrowverse, there are a lot better CGI characters than this one, like Gorilla Grodd, King Shark, and Mullis, while Trigon just looks so bad. The CGI is bad, and also the design just doesn't look like Trigon. Honestly, it looks more like Hellboy for the most part, so that's probably the most disappointing thing about this entire episode. Even though I like Trigon more in this episode than the previous episodes, I still think that his form, his CGI form, it's really, really bad, and if this is the reason they pushed this episode off to the second season, I just don't think it was worth it at all. But anyway, as Trigon is in this disgusting CGI form, he kills Angela, which is never even mentioned again, which is weird, but I was still expected, and definitely something that they probably needed to do. I feel like, I mean, the scene where he's touching Angela, it looks terrible. The CGI here is bad, I mean, really bad, but he just starts to destroy the world, which is when Gar comes back. Gar just basically just saved the universe here, kind of by himself, where he turns into a snake, which I gotta say is one of the coolest moments of this episode, because in season 1 he only ever turned into a tiger, so he was more of Tiger Boy than Beast Boy, which is, I mean, Dick even said he called him Tiger Boy, so the fact that he finally turned into another animal, into a snake, that was really, really cool. But he manages to get through to Rachel in a pretty cool scene, and then Rachel manages to get through to Dick in this circus dream, which I gotta say didn't really make much sense, because later Dick didn't really have any role in the fight against Trigon, like, at all, so I don't know why this was necessary. But at the same time, it was definitely pretty cool, tying it back to her dream in the beginning of the season and how that led them all here. And Rachel fully defeats Trigon, which I think would have been a great ending to the storyline if it was the finale, and it still is a pretty good ending to the storyline. Overall, the storyline wasn't very good, but I think it wasn't terrible either. My main problem is the fact that Trigon was the first villain they went with. So weird, because you can only go down from there in terms of power level. Every single villain they're going to go up against, including Deathstroke, who's a much better villain, but is much less powerful. All the villains are going to be less powerful, so it's really weird to me that they started with Trigon, but I still think that this is definitely a visually good scene, and not a bad way to end this storyline. But as the season is coming to an end, or what was supposed to be the season, Dick, Rachel, Gar, and Jason drive off together, becoming the Titans, while Starfire, Hawk Dove, and Wonder Girl, or Donna Troy, all go their separate ways. This is probably the cutoff point for when the original episode was filmed. Everything after this was from the new season, and as such, it just feels different, and also feels a lot better, and I'm still very, very optimistic for what the rest of the season is going to look like. And as we saw in the trailer, Jason Todd tells the world that the Titans are back, and this is something that Deathstroke sees, and now he comes back into action. This was really, really cool. For the most part, I think that in these scenes, the actor, I can't remember his name off the top of my head right now, but the actor who plays Slade, I'm definitely very excited to see what he does with the character. In these scenes, he really looked like Slade Wilson, so that's definitely a good thing. And then we see the costume for the first time on screen outside of trailers and posters and things, and it just looks so cool on screen. I said that Aqualad's costume might be my favorite, but after looking at this scene, I feel like Deathstroke will end up being my favorite costume. It just looks so cool, and I think a lot better than the Arrowverse version of the Deathstroke costume. But all these scenes with Deathstroke, also with Billy Wintergreen, played by an actor who's actually in the Arrowverse for a little bit in The Flash Season 2, it was just such a cool setup for the season, which is the main thing I'm excited about in this season. Deathstroke and that whole storyline, it's going to be so good. episode. If you want to know more details about what's going down with Deathstroke, definitely need to watch this video in the top right corner of the video, talking about the characters who were confirmed for this season of Titans. But that leads into a scene where Dick talks to Bruce Wayne about all his problems in the season, kind of throwing them away. It looks like the next season is going to be, or this season will be a lot lighter in tone. I feel like Dick Grayson will be a lot more lighthearted, so they're kind of throwing away that whole storyline of his life being darkened by Bruce Wayne and how that led up to the dream sequence, and that is good. I think I like that a lot because Titans Season 1 was way too dark for a Teen Titans show, or a Titans show even, so I'm glad they're becoming more light. But my main problem with this scene is kind of Bruce Wayne. Ever since he was cast, and ever since we saw him in trailers, Ian Glenn, the actor who's most famous for playing Jorah Mormont, I was never able to see him as Bruce Wayne. And now, watching him on screen fully in the actual episode, I think that he was poorly cast. Not only is he blonde, which is a little weird because Bruce Wayne is always, he always has black hair, but also he's way too old to play Batman. I just feel like he looks way too old. Also, he looks so much more like Alfred Pennyworth. There was a scene where he looked exactly like I would think Alfred Pennyworth would look like, while he never looked anything like Bruce Wayne. So I think that he was poorly cast for Bruce Wayne. I don't know if he definitely appears more, so we're definitely going to see more of him in the season. Maybe he's going to prove himself, but I think that he just doesn't look like Bruce Wayne, and also his voice, it's very obvious that he's trying to do an American accent, but he is British or wherever he's from, and I think that overall, poor casting for Bruce Wayne, and that was my main problem with that scene. But I do like what the implications of that scene mean for the season, and the episode ends with the Titans actually going to Titan's Tower. So the Titans, which is now Beast Boy, both Robins, or kind of it's going to be Robin and Nightwing probably, and Raven, which is a weirder team. It's not the team that I would expect, but they go to Titan's Tower and they explore the place. Pretty cool. There's a scene of Beast Boy looking at the original Titans and the place I think they would suit up. You saw Robin, Hawk Dove, and Wonder Girl, which is again something I'm so excited to see. It seems like they're going to be flashbacks to the original Titans, which is something I'm really anticipating. But this whole sequence of events was definitely a really cool way. It would have been a really cool way to end the season, but it's also a good way to set up the season. But there also is a very weird kind of shot in this moment where the episode's about to end. They're zooming out of Titan's Tower, and we're about to see the actual tower, the T-shaped tower, but then it just fades away to show just a shot of San Francisco, which was so weird. I felt like they would really show Titan's Tower, and I don't know why they didn't. So that was one of the weirder parts of the episode, but overall, this episode was definitely not bad at all. So in conclusion, the fact that this episode is the season premiere instead of the season finale of season 1, it didn't help the actual episode or the season, the original season, and I think this episode had a lot of things that they just had to complete the original storyline of season 1, which didn't really help it much, and I feel like this episode will end up being by far the worst episode of the season. It's still pretty good, but it's got that season 1 feel, which I think season 2 will not have. It looks based off the trailers that season 2 will not have, but I still think this episode was a pretty good, not great, but pretty good ending to the original storyline, and definitely not a great premiere, and definitely a weird placing in the season, but I am still very excited for the rest of the season. Anyway, I'll probably give this episode something around 8.5 or something, so I'll just say 8.5 out of 10. I'm hoping the rest of the season is a lot better than this one. So anyway, let me know in the comments down below what you thought about this episode, and if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.